Alright, hello and welcome to yet another Cyberpunk 2077 video. In today's video, we're going to once again bring out the S word and look at some good old-fashioned speculation. The speculation for today's video is going to be featured around the 1.7 update. Now, I did very briefly in the previous video mention that this update was coming presumably around the same time as the Phantom Liberty expansion, but in typical Cyberpunk and CDPR fashion, the exact whereabouts of this update and its contents are pretty much a mystery. So although this video is largely going to be speculation, it is also going to be based off the very few confirmed features which have been given to us as a community. The confirmed features which we have so far for some kind of Cyberpunk update is a revamped police system, vehicle combat, and a melee overhaul. But as always, before we get into all that juice, I just want to remind you guys that if you aren't currently subscribed and you do enjoy this kind of content, then please do consider dropping the channel a small subscribe. Okay, so to begin, the confirmation of these three major additions to Cyberpunk 2077 is of course fantastic news. Although it does come basically 2 and a bit years late, bordering on 3 years late from the game's launch. It is better late than never, I guess. These were absolutely some of the biggest gripes with the game, and it's nice to see CDPR finally making improvements. 1.7 seems to be a very substantial update that aims to restore a good chunk of absent content and provide us with some very decent systems to probably experiment with further in the Phantom Liberty expansion. With the assumption that 1.7 will release around the same time as Phantom Liberty, it's pretty safe to assume that the update may provide a foundation for this DLC to flourish, and there's a few reasons why this would make sense. First and foremost, and probably the most obvious, is the fact that Pacifica and the combat zone are being improved upon. They're being created in some ways, from the ground up. To have a combat zone, like the hint is in the name, guys, implies that there has to be some improvements to combat to go alongside this update. Creating a whole area for violence and death, and then having pretty much the same, animations or the same AI to play around with as the base game, to me at least doesn't seem entirely appropriate. But maybe I'm just assuming too much, I don't know. So something like vehicle combat in this situation would make a lot of sense. And again, we know that vehicle combat is indeed coming to Cyberpunk 2077. So this is probably the greatest time to implement it. It has something to go alongside it. It's not just car combat in free roam. It's probably going to be tied to, the Phantom Liberty story and maybe even some of the side content as well. This is actually further confirmed through one of the Phantom Liberty trailers, where you can very briefly see a little bit of car combat, as in V is in the driver's seat, but you are also shooting out of the window. Now, of course, there is a chance that this is a pre-scripted sequence. This could just be one of those little smoke and mirrors illusions for the sake of making a trailer look cool. Going off this logic as well, it would also make sense to have improved artificial intelligence for Phantom Liberty. So we know that updates to Cyberpunk since day one have usually adjusted the AI in some way and generally speaking have improved it over time. Perhaps we will see more of this, but on a much larger scale. And I think when it still comes to the biggest areas of improvement for Cyberpunk 2077, artificial intelligence is always going to be brought up, and rightfully so, because it sucks ass. It sucks major ass, like liquid ass. It's gross. And of course, it wouldn't be a Cyberpunk video without talking about dynamic encounters. Just like artificial intelligence, well, I suppose actually it is artificial intelligence, but there needs to be things which happen that aren't predictable. We need some stuff which isn't necessarily scripted, which isn't on rails, where you can be going from point A to point B, and then all of a sudden you're extremely distracted by a man who has blown his penis off and he needs to be rushed to the hospital. More of that. And as well as this, you need things like police chasing people on the streets, so more of that because it fits the overall setting. Finally, I desperately hope that the overall polish of Cyberpunk 2077 is improved upon. And this is a pretty hard thing to describe. But Cyberpunk is still janky, you know what I mean? You have to play it to truly feel it. But although it may look pretty, the minute you start doing things which are maybe a little bit advanced, or you start breaking things and going beyond what you're expected to do, should we say, the game slowly starts to show its cracks. And even in simple things like animations, which still feel very sluggish, and there's clipping issues, even just NPCs standing around doing nothing as well, as if they were almost forgotten about, like CDPR put them in and then didn't assign any kind of behaviour to them. In those elements, Cyberpunk still feels unfinished, and I truly don't understand how people can walk around saying that Cyberpunk is now 100 times better than it was ever supposed to be, because it's just not. It is simply just fucking not. Because if you play long enough and you start poking around long enough, you can see that although the game is technically stable, there's still not a lot of differences going on under the hood when compared to launch, and I'm sorry, but it's just the absolute truth. Hopefully Phantom Liberty approves upon this, but I want the game to feel as smooth as Red Dead Redemption 2. I know that that is so unrealistic, it's not even worth talking about, but you get the idea. Nothing is jarring, it all blends together, and you very, very rarely feel disconnected from what's happening. So CDPR, if 1.7 is the final update to 2077, go out with a bang. Slap it full of content and bring Cyberpunk up to a level that you would personally be happy with. But anyways guys, look, I've rambled enough. As always, I do want to know what you guys think on the matter, so please do feel free to put your thoughts in the comment section of the video. I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch today's video, and if you enjoyed it, please do feel free to leave a like. Thank you very much guys, and as always, I'll catch you lot in a bit.